today about how study abroad fits into your overall career journey, and to also share some like little tidbits about how you can really make the most of your study abroad experience as it relates to your career goals. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. We have a pretty decent sized group here today, but I would love for this to be a very interactive session. I want to make sure that, you know, any questions that you guys have get answered throughout. So we will have time for question and answer at the end, but also feel free to ask questions at any time. You can type them into the chat box, or if you'd like, you can also just take yourself off of mute and ask. I know this session is being recorded, so just something to keep in mind if you do take yourself off of mute or turn your camera on, but feel free. All right, so we'll start with some introductions. Again, my name is Brianne, and I'm a Global Career Initiatives Coordinator at Career and Professional Development Services. And then I'm really excited to have my colleague Harihar joining today as well. Harihar is a global career peer, and so he works with me, and he's going to be helping to kind of monitor the chat, answer any questions, maybe throw in some helpful handout links and things like that as we go along too. I would love to hear from all of you. So if you would like, maybe just type in the chat a little bit about yourself. So maybe what you're majoring in, and then also if you've already done your study abroad, where did you go? Or if you're planning on doing a study abroad, where do you hope to go? That's always a fun question. So feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. So I'm an ASU alum. I graduated from a global health program in 2012, and I actually am a former study abroad student. So I studied abroad in Paraguay after my sophomore year in 2010. And for me, it was like a very transformational experience. I think that was my first time that was really like a long-term meaningful experience overseas. I had been on like some short-term vacations before that, but in my study abroad experience, I got to stay with a host family, really learn a little bit more about the culture. I actually interned at a biology lab studying Chagas disease. And so that kind of informed my rest of my studies. I went into public health. And so like the research experience that I did during my study abroad was something that was really valuable and contributed to my career goals. So I've kind of just taken it from there, and I actually have kind of looped back around. After I graduated from ASU, I joined the Peace Corps, spent a couple of years living and working in Ethiopia, came back and worked at ASU for some time, and I actually had the pleasure of leading a study abroad program to the Dominican Republic. So got to reverse the roles a little bit from being a participant to now being an instructor on a study abroad program. And I did that for 2 years. And I think, I'm always just so impressed at like the personal growth that students experience during study abroad. That's why I love it so much. And so really excited to be here with you all. Most recently, I was living in Nigeria as a Fulbright when the pandemic hit. So I was there in March and then had to be evacuated back to the US. But luckily, I came back to this role at ASU where I get to keep working with international students as well as globally minded domestic students. So students like you who are interested in working all over the world. So it's a pretty cool job. So here are a couple of the things that we're going to talk about today. And thanks everyone for sharing about yourselves in the chat. I've been kind of reading these intros as they come in. It looks like we've got huge diversity in participants today with experience all around the world. So this is really awesome. So we'll talk about, what is a career journey and how does your global experience through study abroad enhance your career journey? We'll also talk about career competencies and just what those are. There's one that specifically is very relevant for study abroad participants. We'll talk a little bit about building your global network and why that matters, as well as global career resources that might be helpful for you. All right, so what do you think a career journey is? Feel free to share your thoughts with each other in the chat. There's no real right or wrong answer to this question, and it's a little bit subjective, right? So what exactly is a career journey? You've probably already heard me use this phrase a couple of times, and I'll probably continue to use it a couple more times throughout the presentation today. So just kind of curious to hear from you what that sparks in your mind. All right, I see some answers coming into the chat here. So the way you grow in your career and the places that it takes you, definitely. Professional growth, networking, doing internships. A career journey is learning the skills needed to succeed in your career and getting an internship. A career journey is the path you take and all the things that go into being successful in your future career. Definitely thinking about the goals that you want to accomplish and how to get there. Reaching out to people to gain connections. Awesome. I love all of these responses. Thank you all for participating. And you're absolutely correct. All of those things are part of your career journey. So I like the word path. Someone used that. I think it is like a path, right? And you can have kind of a planned path that you want to go down, but your career journey also includes all different stops along the way. And so sometimes those are things that you planned and sometimes they're things that you didn't plan. But each, stop or destination along the path kind of guides you to where you're going next. And so I think, this is kind of a helpful metaphor as we think about like the different stages, right, of your career and your own professional development. I know that, study abroad was a really important part of my career journey, and I think it will be for a lot of you as well. So let's talk a little bit about, what are some of the reasons that are some of the ways, I guess, that study abroad can contribute to your career journey, right? So it's a wonderful time for self-growth and reflection, a great time to think about, what it is that you want to do in life, what matters to you, what kind of values you hold, and where you're headed. It can help you to achieve academic goals. So whether that's, because the study abroad is required as part of your degree program, or maybe you're able to take some course credits while you're abroad. So definitely achieving those academic goals. It's a great opportunity to practice your language skills and also to live in another culture. So building your intercultural competence. And you can meet and develop a great global network. So you meet all kinds of people during a study abroad. And I think this is a really important one to point out because, from someone in my shoes working in career services, the way that you kind of take this experience and then, I don't want to say like market it, but the way that you communicate about this experience to other people, it makes you interesting, right? So when you're applying for things like jobs and internships, this is a great way to make yourself stand out from other applicants. And I see we have a question here from Lindsay about filling out the attendance form. So thank you, Lindsay, for doing that. I really appreciate that. So if everyone can take just a moment there to sign in. And then I'm going to share a quick video. So this is actually a video from Taylor Harper. She's a student who also works in career and professional development services. And she was studying abroad in Prague this past semester, spring 2020. And so I just asked her to share a couple of words about how she felt like study abroad would maybe contribute to some of her goals and her own career journey.
Hi, my name is Taylor, and I had the opportunity to study abroad in Prague during the spring semester. And although my time was cut short, I was able to meet some great friends while abroad. I've made friends from all over the world with similar academic interests in finance. I still keep in touch with these individuals on a regular basis, and I know I can expand these contacts into a professional network in the future. I was also able to take additional classes to qualify for the International Business Studies certificate offered here at ASU, which allowed me to reflect my interests in global finance on my resume.
All right, so I hope that kind of resonated with some of you. It probably sounds similar to your own experiences. Wanted to do a quick poll. So thinking about those of you who've already done your study abroad, what are the skills that you wanted to, or the skills that you did develop during your study abroad experience? And then for those who have not gone overseas yet, what are some of the skills that you're hoping to develop during your time abroad? So I'm actually going to exit out of here. We've got a quick Slido poll. So you can either scan this QR code or go ahead and just go to slido.com and enter in this meeting code. And then we'll start the poll in just a minute here after everyone has joined. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start it. You can still see the information over here on the left if you didn't have a chance to get in yet. So what skills did you or are you hoping to develop during your time abroad? Communication, yes. Networking. Definitely independence, for sure. So I'm definitely seeing some themes here, lots around independence, new experiences, and communication. And then even related to communication, there's some related ones, right? Like empathy and how you connect with others, intercultural communication, cultural awareness. So those are all kind of related. Nice. Awesome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll, but thanks everyone for sharing. I think that's a really fun exercise just to kind of see that, like, no matter where you studied abroad, there's something about the experience that is shared, right? And it's definitely a time of self-growth, and a lot of people grow in the same ways. So even though everybody has their own unique experience, study abroad does a lot of the same things for people. So in career, we talk about some skills that are really important to employers, and we call these skills career competencies. So what I've got on the screen here, these actually come from a survey put out by the National Association of Colleges and Employers, or NACE for short, and they survey thousands of employers all across the US, and they ask them, what kind of skills are you looking for in applicants? And so time and time again, these are the skills that come back as most valuable to employers. I think what's really interesting about these skills is that they're mostly what we would call soft skills, right? Things like your leadership or your teamwork and collaboration. So they're not like technical skills, and they're not the things that we necessarily learn in school, right? So they're things that we learn through our lived experiences. And one of those lived experiences is your study abroad. And especially this final career competency that you see over on the right is global and intercultural fluency. So that's definitely a top skill that employers are looking for. And you all obviously have spent time cultivating that skill or you at least have an interest, even if you haven't gone abroad yet, in cultivating that skill. And so this is something that you're able to kind of highlight about yourself that makes you stand out from other applicants. So global and intercultural fluency, just wanted to put a definition here real quick of what that is. So valuing, respecting, and learning from diverse cultures, races, ages, genders, sexual orientations, and religions. So an individual with this competency can demonstrate openness, inclusiveness, sensitivity, and the ability to interact respectfully with all people and understand individuals' differences. And I think like this skill is just becoming more and more important, right? And so it's one that we definitely see employers putting a big emphasis on. So there are lots of ways that you can develop these competencies. And so, here's a couple of ideas. Obviously, you can have part-time jobs where you, develop professionally. Internships, I know several people included internships when you were talking about what career journey means to you. You can also get involved on campus, so student clubs and organizations. I know that there are lots of organizations at ASU that are globally focused, so it sounds like, that's something that everyone in this group is definitely interested in. I know you can find lots of clubs that also have that kind of a global focus as well. And then, of course, study abroad is definitely up there. So what are some ways that you can leverage your study abroad experience for your career? So there's some ways that you can leverage it in your oral communication. So let's say when you're meeting someone for the first time and you're introducing yourself to them, if you've got some global experience, again, that's really interesting. It makes you stand out. And so that can make for a really powerful introduction. It's also something that often comes up in interviews. And I can tell you from my own experience, I would say most jobs that I've ever applied for, when they see my resume and they see that I have experience overseas, like they're always going to ask me about it. And then, so it's good to be prepared for that, right? And think about that experience. Think about how I can kind of bring that back to the conversation that we're having within the context of the interview, talking about the skills that I learned when I was there, how it was like important for my own personal growth and development, make it relevant for the position that I'm interviewing for. And then again, it makes you really memorable. There are also some ways that you can leverage your study abroad experience in different types of written communication. So your resume is a great place to leverage your study abroad. And I'm going to show you guys some practical examples of how you can do that with your resume, as well as personal statements, other application materials, and you can include it on LinkedIn as well. And Harihar is sharing some helpful resources in the chat, so feel free to click through and open those things so that you have them to view later as well. So I think I'm just gonna take a minute here. I've been talking for a while. Are there any questions that you have so far, questions or comments, anything that you wanna say or talk about before we move on? Thanks for the question, John. So I'm aiming to study abroad around junior or senior year. What would that be a good time to do so? So I think, this is kind of a personal question that's going to be a little bit of a different answer for everybody. As far as like your own growth, I think I studied abroad right before my junior year. For me, that was a really good time to do it because I still had some time to like finish up all my, coursework and everything like that. But I still had time to also take some courses at ASU after my study abroad experience that kind of, it opened my eyes to like other courses that I could take. And so, yeah, it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. As far as your own like career journey, you can really fit it in at any time. I wouldn't say that there's like necessarily one time that's more advantageous than another time. So just kind of whatever works for you. Awesome. Any other questions? All right, so next up, we talked about like powerful introductions as a good way to kind of include your international experience. And I'm gonna ask Hari to go ahead and put a link in here for our powerful introduction handout. We actually have a handout on how you can craft a powerful introduction. And this is typically, you know, when you're meeting someone for the first time and they say, you know, tell me a little bit about yourself. That can always be kind of awkward, right? Like what do you want to know? What should I tell you about myself? And so there's a little bit of a formula for how you can craft this powerful introduction. So it includes, you know, talking about your interests, your experience, your strengths, and then your purpose or goal. And so study abroad is one of those things that you can definitely sneak into this experience piece of your powerful introduction, and again, makes you interesting. So here's an example of what that looks like. And I've kind of used some of my own experiences to show you how I might be able to turn this into a powerful introduction. So I am a global health major at ASU, graduating spring 2021. I'm interested in a public service career advancing the health of women and children in sub-Saharan Africa. I have experience conducting community health work in nutrition and reproductive health in Ethiopia, and my strengths include working in diverse multidisciplinary research teams and bringing innovative solutions to complex problems. I'm excited to learn more about your open global health positions. So that's using that formula with the 4 different pieces and just kind of an example of what that looks like. All right, so the other thing that I really wanted to show you are some different ways that you can include study abroad on a resume. And there's actually several ways that you can do this, not necessarily like a right or wrong way. So you can include study abroad in the education section, so just right underneath your ASU degree. You can include study abroad in the experience section, especially if your study abroad includes maybe like an internship, right? Then that would definitely go into an experience section. And you can also include your study abroad, either the entire experience or pieces of it, like your language skills, in a separate language or separate skills section. So here's a couple of examples of what that would look like. And some of you may have resumes already. Some of you may not have written a resume yet. So these are kind of general examples and showing ways that you can incorporate your study abroad. So this example shows how you would include it underneath the education section. So let's say right here you had your ASU degree and you know, show your expected graduation date. And then right underneath that, you could have your study abroad experience. And it's going to be formatted very similar to your other educational experiences. So you want to be sure to include the name of the place where you were studying, what the concentration was that you were studying, if you took any coursework or language classes while you were there, and then the dates of the experience as well. Here's an example of how you can include it in your work experience. So again, you'll see that here the person has taken their international experience and just put it like any other work experience. Sorry about that. And so in this format, when you list it as a work experience, you actually have a little bit more room underneath the experience to add some bullet points about what you were doing in that position. So I think this is definitely a good option for longer study abroad experiences. And then, like I said, if you had an internship or something where you can focus more on those professional skills that you developed during that experience. And then here's the last example about how you can include your study abroad in a skills section. So they've actually done, they've got a language section here. You can see where they've included their advanced German, that they studied it for 5 years, and then novice in Spanish, 1 semester in Spain. So that's, again, just a different way of including the information. So I'm curious to know if you all have resumes, what are some of the ways that you have shared study abroad on your resume? And I know we have lots of people in this group too who also have not done your study abroad yet. So, you know, obviously you haven't actually had the opportunity to put your study abroad on a resume. Is there one of those three options that you like better? So would you think that maybe you would put your study abroad under education, experience, or skills? Education. Anna puts hers under experience. And I can tell you from my own resume, there are times when I have included it in different sections. So depending on what I'm applying for, there are times where I have listed it under the education section. And then there are also times where I've listed it under experience. And actually, I tend to do a lot of global health research. And so there are times where I have listed specific research projects that I did during my international experiences in a research section as well. So resumes can also have different sections that I didn't include in this presentation, and you can kind of figure out where, you know, it's going to make the most sense on your resume. So I've included them in a resume research section as well. Awesome. Alrighty, I'm going to share my screen again. So definitely, you know, like I said, I think study abroad is one of the things that always comes up in an interview. When people look at your resume and they do see that international experience, they're curious. So a lot of times they'll ask you a really short, like, wow, that's really cool. How was it? And I'm sure all of you who have studied abroad have experienced this question. And it's so difficult to answer, right? Because you went and had this like transformational experience. You want to tell everyone about it. And then you come back and people are like, how was it? And then really all they're looking for is like 2 or 3 sentences, right? They don't want like all the stories. And so you have to try to figure out how to take this whole experience and put it down into a couple of sentences that your audience is going to be interested in. So that's definitely one way that I've seen this question kind of asked, is this very broad, like, how was it? Or tell me about it. Another way that this question is a lot of times asked in an interview is they'll say, tell me about a time when, and then they might say something like, tell me about a time when you had to overcome a challenge. And perhaps your study abroad comes to the top of your mind, right? So if you're answering a question like that, we actually have something that we call the STAR method, which again is kind of like a formula that's going to help you to answer these types of questions. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. So it's a 4-part formula for how you can answer these types of questions. And we actually use this STAR method for all kinds of behavioral-based interview questions. So that second question that you see on the screen there, tell me about a time when. In career services, we call that a behavioral-based interview question. So really what the interviewer is looking for is not just some like memorized rote answer. They want to know practically in your life, when is a time that you experienced something like this? How did you approach it? How did you overcome it? What skills did you learn out of that? And then how does that relate to the position that you're applying and interviewing for now, right? So this is just generally a good thing to know about the STAR method. And you can actually practice kind of creating these little stories using the STAR method for different experiences that you have. So you could create a STAR method story about your part-time summer job. You could create a STAR method story about a particularly difficult class project that you had. And you could definitely create a couple of STAR method stories about your study abroad experience. And once you've kind of got these stories down, you've like got them in your pocket, right? Then when you're in your interview and a question comes up, then you're ready to kind of respond in a way that's really meaningful for the person that you're interacting with. So here's an example of that. And again, this is based on my own real experience in Paraguay as a study abroad student. So if someone asked me a question like, tell me about a time when you had to overcome a challenge, here's a way that I could answer that based on my own study abroad experience. So when I was in college, I studied abroad in Paraguay for a summer. I interned at a biology lab studying Chagas disease, a re-emerging infectious disease caused by an insect. The insects are called vinchucas. And we had to go to very rural parts of the country to collect the vector, the little bugs. And these insects often live in people's homes. So they'll live like under mattresses or in cracks on the wall of their house. And so we had to ask permission to go into the homes in indigenous communities. Now the challenge was we couldn't speak the indigenous language as the American study abroad students, so it was difficult to gain access to the homes and collect our samples. So what we did was we worked with community leaders to gain trust and communicate the purpose of our research with the community, and then the community leaders would approach the homeowners, right? So that's how we were able to gain trust and ultimately gain access to their homes. We entered and collected samples from more than 50 homes, and I learned the importance of collaboration and humility and developed skills in community-based research that I feel like will position me to advance the mission of this organization. So another chat question, what is one way that you plan to use your global experience to advance your career? And so again, whether you've had the experience or not yet, you can kind of just use your imagination, thinking back to your own career journey. How do you see study abroad fitting into that? And I would love actually if anyone wants to unmute themselves and share with the group. So some of the answers that are coming in the chat here, I'll read them out loud. So comparative study of differences in legal systems, government, and investigations between the US and another country. Communicating in another language and learning how others do things like transportation methods that don't exist in the US, definitely. As a general learning opportunity, developing language skills, cultural competency in healthcare, so like in a specific field. Using global experience as a better way of understanding different markets for my field. Okay. Using my global experience as a better way of understanding, oh, I already read that one. Great way to practice living and communicating in different cultures. And it looks like someone's main goal is to work overseas. So obviously that's going to be highly relevant to have some international experience. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for sharing. Feel free to keep the responses coming if anyone didn't have a chance to share yet. So one of the other things that we talked about, right, is building your global network. So let's dig into that a little bit deeper. So there's a couple of ways that you can work on building your global network. And one of them is to add your study abroad experience to your LinkedIn. So, you know, resumes are great, and we definitely use those for formal opportunities like applying for jobs, internships, or even graduate school. But LinkedIn is another great way that you can showcase your different professional experiences. And actually, when you add a different location onto your LinkedIn, it now gives you a way to connect with other people who also have experience either in that same location or other people who are interested in international experience, right? And so it's really interesting once you do that to kind of see how your own network expands, and even the types of suggestions that you get for people that you should connect to is going to become more diverse. So you can connect with other study abroad participants and host country colleagues. So again, you can use LinkedIn to do this. You can actually use other social media also to connect with people while you're studying abroad. And then you never know how those connections are going to come back and be relevant again for you in the future, right? And so it's a good way to stay in touch with your new contacts, but also thinking like long-term about how you're going to engage with your global network and some of the reasons why it's important. You never know, you could go back to your host country someday. And I'm sure for many of you, when you study abroad, you kind of fall in love with the place, right? And it sparks this like need to travel to other places, but you could also go back to that same place someday. And so it's always good to keep your connections there. So that's a little bit more personal, but you could also go back and work there as well. You never know. Another reason that this can be important is a lot of people will use their study abroad experience to ask for a recommendation. So let's say you're applying for graduate school and you want to ask for a recommendation. You could ask either the person who led your study abroad program, or you could ask, you know, a colleague in your study abroad host country. You probably wouldn't ask a peer who was on the study abroad with you, but you could definitely connect with that peer for other opportunities. So just kind of general networking with them. So I wanted to give a little bit of a story here about one of my experiences. So I lived in Ethiopia from 2012 to 2014, and I mostly did HIV prevention work when I was there, as well as gender and development work. So I, you know, had my experience, came back to the US, and then 5 years later, I actually had the opportunity to go back to Ethiopia for a summer to do a research project. So this time in 2019, when I was going back to Ethiopia, I was studying cervical cancer. So that's something totally different than what I had previously worked on when I lived in Ethiopia. But I was trying to kind of like rack my brain, like, do I know anybody in Ethiopia who works on cervical cancer? And I couldn't think of anybody, but I thought, you know what, let me post this out to my network and see what people are able to come up with. So I went on LinkedIn, and as you can imagine, from being in the Peace Corps and having so many connections who also lived in Ethiopia, I have a lot of connections on LinkedIn who have some sort of an Ethiopia connection, right? So I just posted on there saying, hey, you know, wondering if anyone knows anyone in Ethiopia who works in cervical cancer. And sure enough, someone who I didn't even actually know, she was like a friend of a friend, right? She saw my post, and then she thought of her husband, who's Ethiopian, and his friend, like neighborhood friend growing up is a doctor in the capital city who works in cervical cancer. And so she connected me, and it was like this whole network of people, right? I didn't know this guy, and he was actually like 5 connections removed from me. But through my network, I was able to get connected to him on LinkedIn. We sent some messages back and forth, and then he was able to actually commit to helping me with my research project. And you guys, I didn't even tell you at the beginning of this, the reason that I was going back to do research there is I had won, or I was applying for a scholarship to do this research project. And I needed a mentor in this host country. So Dr. Dowie, he agreed to be my mentor. He helped me to get all of my paperwork submitted for this fellowship program. And in the end, I got $7,500 to go and do this research project with Dr. Dowie. We worked together. It was an amazing experience to be able to learn from him. He became a mentor to me. And even to this day, we're connected and still working on research together, even remotely. So it's, been a super great way that I was able to meet someone new, develop a professional working relationship, and it all happened like through my online global network. So just a little bit of a story there, right, to kind of show like how this actually takes place. So wanted to cover some of the career resources that are available to you as you, embark on your own global career journey. I've included our website here, career.asu.edu. We've got tons of resources, including sample resumes and cover letters. We've got YouTube videos like the one that Harihar shared earlier. And you can also schedule one-on-one appointments with our career advisors. So we have one-on-one appointments for basically anything that you need, whatever your next step is in your career journey. We're there to help you get there. We can help you to do interview prep. We can even set up a mock interview for you. We have lots of like one-off workshops and events like this. So, whatever it is that you're looking to dig a little deeper on, let's say you're ready to set up your LinkedIn and want to know kind of like best practices for how to do that. We have workshops on that all the time. So a little bit of everything. Definitely, I recommend, heading over to our website and checking it out. You can also find us on Handshake and on social media as well. All right, so that's everything. So I wanted to open it back up for any questions from you all.
Yes, I have a question. Could I ask? Hello?
Go ahead. Yes.
Is it possible to transfer my education from some of the European Union, such as University Polytechnic of Catalonia, Spain, to this university without TOEFL exam at the current time? Is it possible for next year could transfer my graduation GPA to this university or not?
Lindsay, do you want to jump in here?
Yes, in next year. Yes, in next year. Next year, I would be finish my graduation from this university, and then continue to this. Is it possible?
Okay, thank you for the question, Milad. I'm going to see if Lindsay knows the answer to this question.
I repeat it again. At the current time, I'm a student of University of Polytechnic of Catalonia, Spain, Barcelona. In next 1 year, I will be finish my education, a master degree. After finishing this course, is it possible continue it in this university or not? Or it has many rules such as previous time when I was in Iran?
Thank you for the question, Milad. I think we'll give Lindsay a moment here to type a response. I think just for me off the top of my head, I definitely don't have the answer to that coming from Career and Professional Development Services. I would recommend checking with admissions as well as the academic department where you want to study at ASU.
Thank you for your support.
Mm-hmm. We'll see if Lindsay has anything else to add to that too. And Jose, it looks like you've got a question too.
Yeah, I'm just wondering with the whole thing going on, lately with the pandemic, I wonder how the study abroad's even going to work for next year in the summer.
Because of COVID, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, let's have Lindsay answer that as well. She'll be best positioned to answer that from the study abroad side.
Hi, I got a little behind when I was answering. Do you want to repeat your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, my question was that how will like study abroad work with the pandemic going on, right now for next year, like in the summer or anything like that?
Sure. It's dependent on which program you're looking into going on, because it's obviously dependent on which countries are open up for US citizens to come and visit. Um, and so we're working our program's deadlines for September 25th. That just passed, and that was for spring semester programs. So those are available for students to look and study abroad on if you're looking to go for an entire semester. Our summer programs we're still working out the details for them. And if there's a program you're interested in, we recommend that you save it, and you can get updates for when the program applications are going to be open. We're planning on hosting and having study abroad programs going on. We're just trying to work out the details of them right now.
Okay.
So stay tuned and hold tight. We will get you to a different country, hopefully sometime soon.
Yeah, because I was originally I was really supposed to go to Japan like this summer, but then everything got canceled. So I'm hoping that Japan like lifts that ban on us.
Right. Yeah, I totally understand. There's a lot of students who unfortunately had that happen to them. But if you're available for this summer to go and study abroad, that program should hopefully be opened up again. It just will be a little bit time. We're trying to figure out the details of all of our summer programs.
Okay.
Sure.
I have a question. Are there any like scholarships available for study abroad? I mean, I know there are, but is there like a specific place I go, a specific website to look on?
Would you like me to answer that question again? Okay. So yes, on our website, there's a drop-down box that says, from there you can go, it's under, what is it? It's under ASU students and then explore funding. And then you can go under that is scholarships and grants. So I will link that in our chat box. And that's all of the scholarships that so it goes over all the scholarships that you have that apply to your study abroad as well. Then it also includes our scholarship search for study abroad scholarships specifically, as well as the study abroad office scholarships. So the ones that we specifically do through our office. And
okay, thank you.
I meant to, excuse me 1 second. Okay, and I just sent it.
Great questions, everyone. Feel free to keep asking questions. We've definitely got some time left. I'm also going to put my email into the chat. So if anybody would like it, it's brianne.lott@asu.edu. And again, I work in career and professional development services. I work specifically with what we call our globally minded domestic students. So students like you who are interested in careers overseas. And so if you are interested in an international career and want to do a little bit more of that career exploration or talking about some of these strategies that we talked about today to leverage your study abroad, or maybe you want to get connected with other people who have international experience, again, to like do some of that networking, whatever it is that you're looking for, would be happy to set up some time to meet with you one-on-one and learn a little bit more about your background and what it is that you're looking for, and provide some personal guidance as well. So feel free to reach out to me. We do also have lots of great events, ways for you to get involved with career and professional development services if this is something that you're interested in. So for example, we have like a lot of great alumni panels where we'll bring in different alumni who have experiences all around the world, and they talk about, how what their own career journey has been, and tips and tricks on how they got to where they are. So, definitely check it out. I'm going to put our general website in here as well, which is career.asu.edu. All right, well, thanks everyone so much for being here today. Feel free to reach out to me. I hope that you do, and I hope that we get the chance to connect again. And if you would like a copy of the slides or anything, you can also email me to get those. All right, thanks everyone.